Hi, sweetheart. How are you? How are you today? I know you.
Alika Alse is a lactation consultant.
We waiting for one more mama and baby.
She teaches new parents how to do something that seems basic and easy, but isn't.
Hi, Erica. How are you?
I had an issue or some insecurities about my milk production. I had to call Alika throughout the process just to, be reassured that I was feeding my baby enough.
It's very valid. You can be late now, going back to work, especially. Yeah, let's talk about that.
I am back at work, and so right before going back to work, I was having a full breakdown on having to pump. Will I have enough milk for her while she's at home?
He's on a breastfeeding strike.
I'll go to the breast. So the strike happened not too long after I lost my mother. He would latch and then be like, ha ha ha.
Just kidding.
Yeah, and then back to that. Where's that bottle wine?
Support is what this gives you an understanding that you're not doing this alone. You're not the only one that doesn't understand what your body may be going through.
There are a million problems that can arise while nursing. But a lot of parents try to go through with it because human milk contains antibodies and bacteria that help develop babies' immune systems. Babies fed on human milk also have lower rates of obesity and asthma later in life.
How did you get into this job?
I was a teen mom, single teen mom. And when I gave birth to him in the hospital, the nurse just put him on the breast. She was like, you're going to feed him. And I'm like, what is this? My mom didn't breastfeed. My grandma didn't breastfeed. My sister, no one that I know was doing this.
Is that a common experience?
It is. It is a common experience, especially for women of color like myself.
Alse's experience is part of a nationwide disparity. White parents are overall more likely to nurse. Meanwhile, the U.S. on a whole has one of the lowest nursing rates of any developed country.
My support group is open to all parents, bottle feeding, breastfeeding, chest feeding, pumping and feeding. My whole concept of that is, if that's your choice, is one thing. If you've been brainwashed to think that you have to do this because your body couldn't do what it needed to do and you never got the answers, that's where the challenge comes in.
Formula exploded in popularity starting in the 1950s. It's safe, effective, and saves lives, given how nursing is often more difficult than people expect. Formula's also helped women enter the workforce, but it's just not as healthy as human milk.
Do you want me to wear one?
Yes, please.
So scientists like Layla Strickland are looking for alternatives.
So the other thing is we'll go ahead here and grab gloves. This is also mainly to protect ourselves from us.
Her startup, Biomilk, is trying to produce human milk in a lab.
This looks like milk.
Well, it's frozen. It looks like an ice cube.
So it's not milk.
It might be. We don't know for sure.
They're not sure because scientists are still figuring out what human milk even is. They do know it has thousands of unique molecules. In the body, milk is produced by cells that sit in between a person's blood supply and their mammary gland. Milk is secreted when nipples are stimulated by a latching mouth, or even thanks to hormonal cues, like the sound of a crying baby. Milk's composition changes to best suit a baby's saliva, age, and even the time of day. Biomilk's process starts with mammary epithelial cells, aka the building blocks of boobs.
That's the cells.
How many cells is this?
A couple million.
So they look good.
They look great. Yep, just a tiny little pellet that you can see. That's the cells that we're transferring now into a new home. All right, so these guys are now transferred into their new home. We can take a quick look at them on the microscope.
Biomilk works by culturing cells, a process not unlike making lab-grown meat. Layla's team feeds the cells nutrients and vitamins similar to those in the bloodstream. Then it incubates the cells in a bioreactor, whose surface area works like the inside of a breast.
It takes a couple of weeks for them to get to where they're nice and dense in there. And once they reach that point, we then go ahead and add that hormone, prolactin. From there, we start to see some of the components of milk being synthesized, within days, really.
Biomilk is far off from actually selling their product, around 5 years. Eventually, the goal is to develop different batches of milk. One that reflects a vegetarian diet, another for late in a baby's development, and still others from cells biopsied from individual people's boobs, the bespoke suit of lab-grown milk.
And you'll go ahead and you can go ahead and take this from me with your right hand, and you can hold up the flask with your left hand. We've got this idea that if you could collect a woman's own cell sample and propagate that in the lab and get it going into one of our units, we could produce milk for her based on the genetics of her own cells. You don't have to collect cells from a pregnant woman. In fact, you could collect cells at any point. You could even collect cells from men. We think they would respond to the hormones in the same way.
Still, biomilk wouldn't attain the complexity of the real thing. It's missing bioactive ingredients because it's produced in a sterile lab, which also leads to other challenges.
How much will this product cost?
Ultimately, we think we can get it down to be pretty comparable to infant formula. That's our goal.
Based on everything I've seen here today, it seems like it would be a very expensive product.
Yes, and today it would cost thousands of dollars a day to feed your baby our product. And so I don't think any of us will feel satisfied if all we can do is, recapitulate the advantages of a privileged class of people.
Biomilk isn't the only company that wants to scale. Helping stressed out parents is a big business. There are so-called millennial formula companies that tout organic, gluten-free ingredients. There are startups disrupting breast pumps. Biomilk has competitors also working on growing milk in labs.
Say good morning. Okay.
But that industry might be a lot smaller if our culture around nursing were different.
What could our society do to better support parents?
Well, first, I think that breastfeeding shouldn't be so taboo. Like, the fact that I have to cover up in public is awkward. I mean, you don't like putting a blanket over your head when you eat.
Do you feel supported in your workplace?
Not really.
How much time do you spend pumping on an average workday?
The full hour. I work a 10-hour day, so my hour break, they split into 3. So I have 3 20-minute breaks.
Other parents in Alsay's support group struggle with the same issue as McLeod. If you go to work, you need to pump every few hours or risk drying up. Meanwhile, the US is the only high or middle income country that doesn't have any mandatory minimum parental leave. More leave correlates with higher nursing rates and healthier babies.
More time off would be ideal. And at 6 weeks, I was just figuring out breastfeeding. Like, that's when your body starts to essentially regulate itself. The 4th trimester is change for not just her, but me as well. So more time would just, that would have made life so much easier.
There's politics around formula and around human milk. And, some mothers and some parents feel a little bit ashamed and have difficulty breastfeeding and feel like they shouldn't be using formula. Do you worry about contributing to that mindset?
Absolutely. That is the last thing we want to do, is to cause anyone to reinforce anyone's sense that they're not doing the right thing for their baby. We get critique from both sides of the breastfeeding polarized arguments. You have real breast is best camp who probably exaggerate the benefits of breast milk, and that ends up becoming the source of shame for women who are unable to breastfeed. I know that myself. I felt like I was failing as a mom because I couldn't provide this magic elixir for my own children. Meanwhile, we have also people who are feeding infant formula and are resolved in that option and feel they've grappled emotionally with that challenge, and have come to a place where they feel fine about it. We've really, as a society, I think, framed infant feeding as a choice that the mother must make. It's all on her, this decision. How are you going to feed your baby? And your answer to that question is informative of how good of a mother you are, really, is sort of the debacle that we're in. It's not really a choice, it's a reaction to your circumstances. It's like, if you can't breastfeed, then like, what choice do you have? And so, you know, I think actually Biomilk's product represents maybe the first time that there would be a choice to be made. And people will be confronted with a choice of like, well, now there's a third option. And so there's a third possibility anyway. And so what would you choose if somebody handed you a bottle of bovine-based infant formula or a bottle of human milk collected from cells? And so that actually then becomes a true choice. And currently, I don't think that there are really any choices.